Great pitching matchup potential tonight as Blue Jays host the Astros. And in today's first segment, we'll deep dive that matchup. In the second segment, we'll look at prominent moves and players between these two franchises, Houston and Toronto. And in the third segment, we'll take a look at how things are going for a player I dubbed at the beginning of the season as the X Factor for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And keep in mind that you can catch every Toronto Blue Jay game on SiriusXM. Absolutely want to thank you for choosing to spend part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. Much appreciated there. Hello to you watching this on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast YouTube channel. Hit that like and subscribe, please, and thank you. And for those of you making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day, thank you for that as well. Hit those 5-star for those reviews there, please, and thank you. Now, last night at the Dome, oh boy, not so much of a pitching matchup, right? But tonight should be a different story, although both starting pitchers have been much better during the day this season than in night games, and this is a night game, but still a lot of potential from these two pitchers tonight. Let's start on the Blue Jays side of things. Kevin Gausman. Are we loving Kevin Gausman? Holy moly. And just as a side note, I mean, think about the free agent price tags that we saw this past offseason. Not only are we loving Kevin Gausman, but aren't we loving the timing of when the Blue Jays landed Kevin Gausman, right? I mean, think about what his contract would be in this past offseason or what he's worked towards for this next offseason. I mean, Kevin Gausman got a big deal from the Toronto Blue Jays, but when you really look back and you look at the landscape of Major League Baseball, it's going to end up being quite a value, quite a bargain on the Blue Jays side. Got to love that. Now, Gausman, my goodness, Blue Jays averaging just 3 runs per game in Kevin Gausman starts. The offense this season for the Toronto Blue Jays, we've already seen, it's not going to allow for the hair regrowth here on my end. They've scored exactly 3 runs. In fact, in each of his last, at least 3, might even be his last 4 starts, they've scored exactly 3 runs. Now, Kevin Gausman himself on the season has allowed 23 earned runs. 7 of those were in the first inning to this Houston Astro team back in that start he had back in April. If you remember that start, do you remember Chris Bassett's first start? He was fully expecting to be able to mix and match and set up those St. Louis hitters. That was the Sunday game of that opening weekend, literally opening weekend of the season. And Bassett, if you recall, he was expecting to be able to flip a few different pitches up there, use his repertoire, set the batters up. He was expecting St. Louis to allow the at-bats to go deep into the count, and Bassett could set them up that way. But much to his chagrin, they were jumping all over every first and second pitch. I mean, they were just so aggressive in that game. That's how this Houston game was for Kevin Gausman. You could see that he had a definite strategy for this game, but the Astros turned the strategy on its head. Even some of the outs, I remember Alec Bregman flying out to center field. He hit the ball, I mean, right on the nose. Even the outs in that first inning were loud and ugly. Now, guys, I was going to say, you've never seen Gausman so bad. Now, he did give up 5 runs a couple starts later in the second inning to the Red Sox, so he has had a couple of these blow-up outings, none as bad as that one against Houston. And again, that first inning, my goodness. Now, he did settle in after that. I think he pitched another 4 shutout innings after that. He did settle in. And obviously, obviously that Houston start and that Boston start, those are 2 of his 12 starts that were not good. The other 10 have been stellar. Now, as we were saying earlier, both of these pitchers better in day games. The Kevin Gausman's day ERA is 0.39. Like, are you absolutely joking with me right now? Are you absolutely kidding me? 0.39 ERA in day games for Kevin Gausman. Wow. He also gave up 8 runs in that start at Boston. So that was in total, gave up 8 runs there, gave up 7 in that Houston start. So there's 15 runs right there in night starts, right? So you can kind of see why his night stats are nowhere close to his day stats. But even without those 2 starts, I mean, how could the night stats be close to the day stats if your daytime ERA is 0.39 for crying out loud? Holy moly. This will be Gausman's 6th start in front of the home crowd at the Rogers Center. 1.72 ERA so far for Kevin Gausman at Rogers Center. Getting it done. Jose Altuve, let's see if he plays in this game. In his career, he's 4 for 12 with a double and a home run versus Gausman. Let's see if he'll play, because in that first series in April, Blue Jays Astros, Altuve was hurt. He was out for that. Now he's since come back, but over this past weekend, he had said he felt something in his oblique, so he missed the game. He missed the Astros game Saturday, missed the Astros game Sunday. He missed the Jays Astros game on Monday as well. So we'll see what his availability is. If you saw Locked On Blue Jays yesterday, I'm definitely anticipating from how Houston's talking. It does sound like Altuve will be part of this series, and he's a 337 career hitter versus the Toronto Blue Jays. So Gausman isn't the only Jay that he hits well, but of course, to state the obvious, if Jose Altuve's in there, Blue Jays are going to have to be wary of that bat. I've never seen a pitcher dominate Yordan Alvarez like Kevin Gausman does. Yordan Alvarez, I really think that Blue Jay fans should see in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. what Astro fans see in Yordan Alvarez. He's an absolute masher. He's an absolute stud. Now, never going to be able to hold a candle to anything Vlad does defensively. Even Vlad defensively as a third baseman was a superior defender to anything Yordan Alvarez could do. But at the plate is what I'm talking about here. Consistently good approaches. You cannot get him out. Consistently big hits. He's such a masher. I mean, I'm beyond impressed with Yordan Alvarez, but Kevin Gausman has owned this guy. Alvarez 0 for 7 versus Gausman, and there's 5 strikeouts in there for crying out. Oh, holy moly. Extremely impressive. Extremely impressive. On the other side of the coin now, Kyle Tucker. This is extremely impressive on Houston's side now. Kyle Tucker, 4 for 6 with 2 walks in his career against Kevin Gausman. So 8 plate appearances. He's reached base 6 times against Kevin Gausman. Oh boy. Going to have to watch that one tonight. Hunter Brown on the mound for the Hunter Brown on the mound. Hey, that rhymes there. Hunter Brown on the mound for the Houston Astros, making his 19th career appearance. It's his 14th career start. 12 start this season. In his previous 11 starts, the Astros are 7-4. If you're watching this game tonight and you're thinking, is this some sort of time warp? Have I gone back? Is this a young Justin Verlander? You don't be surprised. This guy Hunter Brown grew up just outside of Detroit when Verlander was a Tiger. He patterns everything he does after Justin Verlander, the mechanics, the stuff, the philosophies as well. Justin Verlander can strike you out, but he's smart enough as a pitcher to understand that a strikeout takes a lot of pitches. And if you're striking out a ton of batters, that's a ton of pitches. So you're probably not going to make it to that 7th, 8th, 9th inning as a starter. You want to give yourself a chance to go as deep into the game as possible. So Roy Halladay understood things like this as well. So you try to get weak contact early. You try to get a resolution to the at-bat early in the at-bat, and you try to do that by getting weak contact as quickly as possible. There's a weak ground out, a pop-up, something like that. You're out. Let's move on. That's exactly what Justin Verlander has made a Hall of Fame career doing. It's exactly what you're going to see from Hunter Brown. Now, I'm not saying, hey, this is the same as facing Justin Verlander, right? Hunter Brown is no Justin Verlander. Who is? Justin Verlander is special. But I'm just saying, Hunter Brown, you're going to see a lot of things that remind you of Justin Verlander. And Hunter Brown is very, very good. Huge future. I actually am thrilled to have him on my fantasy team. And those of you who play fantasy baseball and have Hunter Brown on your fantasy team, you already know what I'm talking about here. This guy's very legit, has a huge future, and is already doing well right now for the Astros. Astros 5-1 in Brown's road starts. Brown himself, 4-0 with a 3.68 ERA on the road. That's all very good. Now, one thing I'll mention is all 4 of the home runs Hunter Brown has allowed this season, now they've all come on the road. So hopefully a big fly or 2 from the Blue Jays tonight. Again, going to mention he's been much better in day games than in night games. Now, he's dominating lefties, so you can kind of see if the Blue Jays wanted to get Kevin Biggio a couple games in this 4-game series, you can see why Monday was one of them. I can't see him being in the lineup today. I would imagine they would want to have as few lefties in there today as possible against Hunter Brown. Is the split finger that Hunter Brown is throwing right now is just dominating lefties. Now, righties are hitting 288 versus Hunter Brown. So some of the Blue Jays that really need to get going are the righties, right? The Alejandro Kirks, the Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s, the Matt Chapman. So hopefully, as good as Hunter Brown is, hopefully the Blue Jays can do well. The righties can do well against him tonight. Now, one thing we know for sure, when there's 2 strikes, you're going to see that curveball. It's his best pitch. It's a strikeout pitch. And when Hunter Brown is on, he's a ground ball machine. So you'll know if the Blue Jays are in for a long night, if through the 2nd or 3rd inning, you thought to yourself, oh, geez, that's a lot of ground balls this guy's been inducing tonight. Well, you'll know then, Hunter Brown is on. No Blue Jay has ever faced Hunter Brown. This will be a first for everyone in the lineup. So Blue Jays do a good job sharing information with each other, right? No one will be able to share anything about what they've seen from Hunter Brown in the past in this game. A reminder, you can catch today's Blue Jay game on SiriusXM. And coming up on Locked On Blue Jays, we'll look a bit deeper at the relationship and history of these 2 organizations, including a look at some key trades and players that have played as a Blue Jay and as an Astro in their career. But first, wanted to mention that buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. GameTime.co. This is a great app. It's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it, near you. Killer deals and last-minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. You can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. I've used Game Time 3 times already this season to go to Blue Jay games. That's where I got the Romano and Jansen bobblehead. That was my favorite experience so far, but of going to the games, I mean. But my experience with using the Game Time app has been 2 thumbs way up. So easy to use. You can see why it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You get the image of the seats before you buy. You know exactly what to expect when you arrive, and you get the tickets in a matter of seconds. It's 2 clicks and you're done. Yeah, that easy. And the tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you don't have to go, digging through your emails and things like that. I found it very, very convenient. Now, you can snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. I've done it myself a few times. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, in a moment here, we're going to look at a few trades that have taken place between the Houston Astros and the Toronto Blue Jays and a few players that have made their mark for both franchises. But first, let's just acknowledge certainly the best player to play for these two organizations, Roger Clemens. I mean, my goodness, Roger Clemens was a Blue Jay for 2 seasons. He won the Cy Young both those seasons. I mean, is that good? My goodness, absolutely incredible. He won the Triple Crown both. So yeah, did you even know there was a Triple Crown in baseball? Not a lot of people know that. For pitchers, I mean, sorry. The Triple Crown for pitchers is when you lead in wins, strikeouts, and ERA. Roger Clemens leading the league in all 3 of those categories both seasons as a Toronto Blue Jay. Now, he would go on to be a New York Yankee after the Blue Jays and would finish up as a Houston Astro. Well, his best days anyway as a Houston Astro. After that, he would win a Cy Young for the Houston Astros as well. My goodness, I mean, Roger Clemens. Say what you will about him as a person. I mean, we're probably going to get mixed opinions of who Roger Clemens was the person, but on the mound, absolutely. I'm thrilled that I got to see those 2 seasons from Roger Clemens. He was exactly like Roy Halladay when Roy Halladay was here, and in particular when Roy Halladay was Roy Halladay, like prime Roy Halladay, right? If you're a Blue Jay fan, you had to make your plans to make sure that you got to see that game by hook or by crook. You got to see that game. That's how special Roy Halladay was. That's how special as a Blue Jay that Roger Clemens was. How about Jay Happ? Jay Happ, a fan favorite, I feel like, with the Blue Jays fan base. Now, he had 2 stints with the Blue Jays. He came from Houston, and that first stint wasn't nearly as good as his second stint as the Blue Jays. When the Blue Jays re-added him in 2016, remember, he went 20-4, but originally he did come over from the Houston Astros in a 10-player trade. Holy moly, none of those players really worked out. Joe Musgrove could still work out. That San Diego Padres pitcher, he could still work out, but the rest of the players, no, not a lot of big league names there. Now, in his first stint with the Blue Jays, Happ would be traded from the Blue Jays to the Mariners for Michael Saunders, if you remember that time. Some CanCon, right? Some Canadian content there. And the whole Michael Saunders experiment really blew up and ended before it even started. He tripped on a sprinkler head, right, in spring training at Dunedin Field, I believe it was at. Just a sprinkler head. The spring training hadn't even started yet, I don't even think. I think he was just out shagging balls. He was there early. He was excited about being, playing for the home country Blue Jays, right? But no, that injury derailed things. Michael Saunders never got going as a Toronto Blue Jay. Now, the first time, if you remember Jay Happ in that first go around as well. So again, this isn't when he really came as a star in 2016. This is that first go around when he was still trying to find himself as a pitcher. Now, he was hampered with a lot of injuries that first time around with the Toronto Blue Jays. And remember, including, do you remember Jay took that comebacker line drive to the head? He ended up on the injury list with a leg injury from that whole ordeal there. Like just really odd and unfortunate. From the, again, the second time around, Jay Happ with the Toronto Blue Jays was superior to the first time. Now, the Blue Jays and the Astros, oddly enough, they've got a long history here of sharing relievers. There's guys like Brandon Lyon, Trent Thornton, Aaron Sanchez, Ken Giles, Anthony Bass, Yimi Garcia, David Carpenter, Roberto Osuna. Boo. I mean, it's factual, so I'll mention him, but of course, boo Roberto Osuna. And how about Francisco Liriano? Remember Francisco Liriano, left-handed veteran pitcher the Blue Jays acquired at the trade deadline with Reese McGuire and Harold Ramirez. Yes, that Reese McGuire. And if you're watching the Tampa Bay Rays this season, yeah, that Harold Ramirez. Harold Ramirez never did anything. He was on several different, with a few different organizations, never did anything. And he goes to Tampa. And of course, just like Tampa resurrects all the pitchers, they've resurrected Harold Ramirez. So go figure there, right? My goodness. And those players were traded in exchange for Drew Hutchison. Now, how ironic, right? Hutchison just the other day was granted his release from the Blue Jays as he exercised an opt-out clause in his Blue Jay contract. So a lot of things coming full circle here. Liriano would be good for the 2016 Blue Jay playoff team. Now, he'd be traded the next trade deadline to the Houston Astros for Nori Aoki and do you remember who? Do you know who? And someone who would walk into the Blue Jay organization as their new number 9 prospect, and that is Teoscar Hernandez. That was Teoscar Hernandez. Teo would go on to develop into an all-star right before our eyes as a Toronto Blue Jay. And of course, we know the rest is history there at this point, traded for setup man Eric Swanson. And of course, we were talking earlier about the best player to play for both franchises, Roger Clemens. Well, if that didn't exist, if Roger Clemens didn't exist, or if you wanted to expand the category to, because he could be the best pitcher between the two teams and then the best position player, George Springer, right? George Springer, right? Absolutely, yes. Man, George Springer let off so many Springer dingers during his time in Houston. He was an absolute stud for them in the playoffs. Huge free agent signing for the Toronto Blue Jays. We know that, right? He'll still be a Jay for a while here. His numbers with the Toronto Blue Jays, yes, they're a little bit down from what his numbers were in Houston, but not by, not otherworldly, not night and day, to a little bit down. Recently, for the Toronto Blue Jays, we know that George Springer has been picking it up, and everydayers will know, we talked at the very beginning of the season. Do I like a lot of the moves the Toronto Blue Jays made in the offseason? Absolutely, yes, but there is nothing that could take place for this team, and I'll expand that and even say there's nothing that could happen at this trade deadline coming up here. There's nothing more important for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, for their success, for their World Series aspirations, than the heavy lifting in the offense being completed, being executed, being carried out by George Springer, Bo Bichette, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at the top of the lineup. Bo, we know. I mean, that's a check mark, right? Absolutely, yes. Vlad, a lot of work to do for Vlad. Now, Springer, work to do for Springer, certainly, yes. But again, hasn't he been much better lately? So definite cause for optimism for George Springer. But certainly, if you're talking, the history of the Toronto Blue Jays and the Houston Astros, George Springer figuring prominently. Locked On Blue Jays is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And coming up, let's deep dive the player that everydayers know I pegged from the start of the season as the player who could be and should be, and dare I even say needs to be, the X factor for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. Now, first, I want to mention that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. That's an issue, right? You can get stretched thin, you can get burned out. Now, therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and it isn't just for those who have experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient. It's designed to be flexible. It's designed to be suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can even switch therapists at any time for no additional charge as well. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP. Now, the Toronto Blue Jays just played games number 60 and 61 on the season. Max Castillo wore number 60 for the Toronto Blue Jays. Gift Ngope wore number 61. He's actually the only Blue Jay ever to wear number 61 in franchise history. Now, Craig, why are you bringing those two up? Very obscure Toronto Blue Jays there. What do those two have to do with the subject of the final segment today, which is the deep dive of the player that you said you've pegged as the X factor for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays? Well, let's take a look. At last year's trade deadline, Max Castillo and Samad Taylor were traded for Whit Merrifield. Whit Merrifield, the Toronto Blue Jays. I was so excited about this trade right as soon as I heard it. I was a guest on the Walk-Off podcast. We were doing an all-day trade deadline, a special that particular day. I was really sick, too. I dragged myself out of bed for the Walk-Off because I'm such a fan of the Walk-Off podcast, and it was trade deadline, right? It was exciting, and I was so excited that the Blue Jays landed Whit Merrifield. If you look at the Shapiro and Atkins, the Shatkins era, they've tried a trillion players to try to be their poor man's version of Whit Merrifield, that player that gives you that level of versatility. You can stick him anywhere in the infield. If you needed to, you could even stick him in the outfield, and they're not going to embarrass themselves out there, and they're going to produce you solid at bats. Gift Ngope, one of those guys. I mean, Darwin Barney, Andy Burns, Ryan Goins, Rob Riefschneider, John Birdie, Ledmes Diaz, Brandon Drury, Gio Urshela, Joe Panic, oh my goodness, Jonathan VR, Kevin Smith, Breivik Valera. You remember Breivik Valera, of course. I never get the name right. Goseki Kato. But that's a tongue twister for me there. Even you could even really say Kevin Biggio, but my goodness, none of them really worked out right. And then at the trade deadline, in walks the actual Whit Merrifield, and I really thought it was palpable last season how he really seemed to enjoy the Blue Jay experience. Now, truth be told, I could see Blue Jay fans' points about why you're not super excited about adding Whit Merrifield. His potential, I thought is very exciting. His versatility, I thought is very exciting. And again, the things we were talking about earlier, that Shapiro and Atkins see a lot of value in that type of player. They've tried to get their own poor man's version of that type of player 1,000 times over. Now you get the actual Whit Merrifield. And I talk about Blue Jay fans. I kind of get why they were like, looking for bigger names perhaps at the trade deadline, because this last season was the fourth straight season that we were seeing production decline from Merrifield, and he was hitting just 240 at the time of the trade. But for me, I want you to consider his situation now. He's I say fourth straight season of production declining. Well, that's still a high 200s, low 300s hitter, right? That 240 that Blue Jay fans saw when, at the time of the trade last season, just put yourself in the mindset of a Whit Merrifield. He's been a Kansas City Royal his entire life. His whole family, everything is all about Kansas City. It's all he knows is that organization. But he knows coming into last season that he's going to be traded. Royals are clearly in a rebuild, one of the worst teams in baseball. Massive rebuild they're doing here right now. So they know they're going to trade Whit Merrifield. Whit Merrifield knows he's going to be traded. So he plays that entire season with 1 foot already out the door, not because he wants to, but because the organization, that's the direction they're going. So 2022 as a Kansas City Royal had to be quite a different time for Whit Merrifield. So I can kind of get why he would be, not performing up to his full standards. I thought things changed when he became a Toronto Blue Jay. I thought he was just rejuvenated, being part of this fan base, being part of this organization, being part of a pennant race. All of these things seemed to really trigger Whit. I thought his spirits really boosted. I thought it was palpable, really, truly. At the end of games, Whit Merrifield, at the end of wins, I saw him last season constantly seeking out the camera to come and give a message to Blue Jay fans. Like, he seemed to really quickly embrace becoming a Toronto Blue Jay. He's played second base, right field, and left field for the Blue Jays this season. Again, but the versatility, right? As a Toronto Blue Jay, hitting 292 with a 339 on base percentage. Is that going to work? Okay, these are very good things, right? Now, bringing depth and production to the Blue Jays, bottom of this Blue Jay lineup, is something I just think is so, so key. When the Blue Jays made that run in September of 2021, it was a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of the big work was done by the bottom of the lineup. Lourdes hitting in that 7 spot, Danny Jansen hitting in that 9 spot, caught fire. So I'm such a proponent of how important it is for the Blue Jays to get production from the bottom of that lineup. Now, Whit has struggled when he's been in the 5 spot, maybe putting a little more pressure on himself because that is an RBI spot. But when Whit Merrifield this season has hit either 6th, 7th, or 8th, so again, bringing that versatility and depth to the bottom of the Blue Jay lineup, he's hitting 327. Hitting 6th, 7th, or 8th in the batting lineup, 327. 14 of his 15 stolen bases have come in Blue Jays victories. So again, here's a guy versatile, right? The flexibility and creating things on the base paths as well. Absolutely loving this. He's top 5 on the Toronto Blue Jays in offensive categories of pretty much all the offensive categories so far this season. Second on the Blue Jays in average, by the way, behind only Bo Bichette. Leads the team in stolen bases. The consistency has been there. You're seeing a professional approach every time he goes to the plate. Whit Merrifield is hitting 300 on the road. Whit Merrifield is hitting 300 at home. He's got the same on-base percentage on the road as at home, and very similar, actually, OPS on the road as at home. Now, is looking for his first home run at Rogers Center, right? Unfortunately, so is same as Vladimir Guerrero Jr., right? And I only mention that because the everydayers will remember we were talking about a podcast that Whit Merrifield was on at the beginning of the season, where he was talking about that this podcast took place in the off season, and they were talking about his power numbers. And he said, "Oh, please, if you let me play in my home ballpark is a place like Rogers Center, I'll hit 20 home runs this season." Well, you've got that situation now, Whit. So I personally would not expecting 20 home runs from Whit, but he has just the 2 and none at Rogers Center. I do think that business is going to pick up. What do we know about the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays? When do they get themselves in trouble? When they're awful with runners and hitting with runners in scoring position. Well, Whit Merrifield has been very good. He's not been a culprit. He's not been a problem with runners in scoring position this season. He's hitting 291 for the Jays with runners in scoring position this season, 318 when there's 2 out and runners in scoring position this season. In high leverage situations so far, Whit hitting over 300. And in the 9th inning this season, Whit Merrifield hitting 375 for the Toronto Blue Jays. This guy, again, because of the versatility and how he can help lengthen your lineup. My ideal bottom of the lineup is Varsho in the 7, Witt in the 8, Kiermaier in the 9. The level of versatility and base running, it literally would be the best base running at the bottom of the lineup in the history of Toronto Blue Jay baseball. And I'm not even exaggerating there. I'm literally actually saying that. So that's what I've always wanted to have happen. I know John Schneider and the Blue Jays have Varsho hitting much higher than that right now, but we'll see how that all works out. But man, for all these reasons, and you've probably got a few reasons of your own, right? But we can see Whit Merrifield, great addition at the 2022 trade deadline. He's a free agent at the end of this season, right? Because there's a mutual option for the player and the team. I doubt that both will exercise that option. So I very much think he will hit free agency. But that's for another day. We're talking about Whit Merrifield as the 2023 X factor for the Toronto Blue Jays. I think he has been that. I think he can continue to do that going forward. And if the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, by the way, currently a 4th place team, are going to realize their potential, then dare I say, Whit Merrifield has to continue to be the X factor. That's a wrap for Tuesday's Locked On Blue Jay podcast. Reminder, you can catch tonight's game on Sirius XM and keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network and tune into Sully hosting Locked On MLB.